start to record this for folks that won't be able to join the call. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Chaney. You've reached the Minorities in Cybersecurity Monthly Community Call. Thank you guys for being able to join me this afternoon / going into the evening. If you're out there on the East Coast, I really appreciate you taking the time to join the call. For those that can see my screen, the leadership quote of the month is, "Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality." That's Warren Bennis. And what we're going to talk about today has a little bit to do that. I try to find leadership quotes that are actually relevant to what the topic of conversation will be today. So as usual, just if you're new to the call, we do have rules. Of course, the calls are the fourth Friday of the month. There will not be a call in December at all. That's the 27th, and I don't think I'm going to get too many people on that call anyway. After November's call, which we'll talk about a little later, you're not going to want to miss that one. I'm glad you joined this one, but please join the one next month because it's going to be interesting. But that November will be our last call for the year. Chatham House rules, of course. Everything that we say here is confidential as far as attribution. You can feel free to, discuss or disclose with others some of the things that you've learned in this particular meeting, but don't necessarily quote, so to speak, your sources. Always be professional and respectful at all times. So, of course, hopefully you guys have been following us on social media. My social media coordinator, who is my son, is suspicious. He hasn't been doing his job. I've been doing his job and my job too. But hopefully you're able to see some of the quotes and everything that we have coming out. If you're not following us, please follow us at Mike Leadership. Of course, I am in cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity and privacy attorney. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me as well. That's my name, of course, at Mary N. Chaney. Again, same updates as before in regards to the job board. The site is up. The actual membership dues, those have changed since September the 30th. The current pricing of the annual membership for students is $49. For nonprofit and government sector folks, it's $149, and for professional, it's $249. Also having the corporate memberships available. I've been actually talking with folks of an event planner about a potential conference here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area coming up in September of next year. I don't think we can leave 2020 without having the opportunity to meet up with our community, and so that's to be determined. I'm still trying to figure those details out. As I said, our community outreach, of course, we have these monthly calls that are open to the public. Again, no call in December. We have our monthly On the Mic with interview series that we're doing. We also have the Leadership Book of the Month Club with Lori. Would love engagement in those things as well. Our monthly newsletters coming out. If you're not on our mailing list, please go out on the website and sign up so you can receive our emails. So I'm going to skip to the note for November, and then I'm going to come back to this particular topic. So our note for November call is our last call of the year, and this one won't be recorded. So I am planning, the plan is for us to have 3 panelists come on to discuss breaking down stereotypes and building relationships outside of your comfort zone. And what I'm trying to get accomplished with that particular talk is I hear, I attend a lot of diversity and inclusion type of events. I'm asked to speak. I'm a speaker, and I'm asked to speak at these events. And, there are conversations being had about white males and how they feel under siege and how they feel discriminated against. And I wanted to take the time to actually dig into this a little bit. I had a conversation with a new friend yesterday and we were discussing some of the challenges that I've faced in my career and how best the men around me could have been better supported during those situations. So I'm expecting it to be an awesome conversation. I think a lot of times we get caught up in our space as minorities and women. We get caught up and we're talking to the people that look like us. So we're talking diversity and inclusion to people of color and women, where those aren't necessarily the folks or the audience we need to be talking to. So I want to bring that alive and try to dig into that a little bit. I'm really, really excited about that particular call as well. So for that, we're going to get into our topic for this month, which is establishing your pivot foot. So we're going to walk through a little bit about myself, how I got to this point in my career, some of the challenges that I've faced, and what I've figured out along the way, in hopes that you guys you're able to take away something from it that you can now utilize within your career. That's the whole function of minorities in cybersecurity, is to actually bring practical leadership types of skills that any individual at any level in their career can implement as they try to attain whatever level of success they want to attain. So when we go through these topics of conversation, I'm doing a heavy load at this particular point, but I just want to share with you guys, just to try to get the conversation going, what it is that from my background and what I've seen and the challenges that I face, in hopes that, we can start to have a dialogue about some of the challenges that you guys have faced, and you can pepper me with questions or feel comfortable enough to share a scenario that you're going through. We're going to walk through some things about my career personally. So if you do not know, this is the first time you've heard my voice, my name is Mary Chaney. I have a IT background. So my undergraduate degree is in information systems. I am an engineer by trade. I was started with high school and then went into college and ended up with a BSBA in InfoSec. Information systems. And then while I was in undergrad, and this is establishing your pivot foot type of scenario, I was exposed to a business law course, and I had my worst grades in this business law course, and my answer to that was to go to law school. So I overachiever, or constant overachiever. However, it was part of the grade and part of what I saw. So you'll hear me say this, and I know you guys have heard this say, you can't be what you can't see. So in my case, and I'm growing up in the late, I'll disclose, late 80s, early 90s, you had The Cosby Show and you had Claire Huxtable, and Claire Huxtable was an attorney. For those of you who are too young to remember, I've never seen that. And so as a young African-American female watching this fictional character, but it actually gave or planted the seed that I could potentially be an attorney myself. So I ended up leaving my hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio, and going to Texas Southern University down in Houston, Texas. And while I was in law school, the goal in law school was to graduate number one in my class, and I did not graduate number one. I graduated number two. I actually saw number one a couple weeks ago, because we had our 20-year law school reunion, which was actually very awesome. It was good. There were some people that I haven't seen in like 20 years. So anyway, while in law school, the FBI came to our law school, and they started recruiting, because within the FBI you had several ways you can actually become an agent, and one of those ways you could become an agent is by having your JD degree, which is what you get when you graduate from law school. So that was my plan. Of course, we were planning, right? My vision, once leaving law school was to go into the FBI. Now, I will stop and back up a little bit. I did entertain the thought of entering into the JAG program for the Air Force. So it was Air Force JAG or going into the FBI. I pursued the JAG program first, and then I got to a certain point. Thank goodness the Air Force JAG program accepts you, and you accept the role if you accept their placement. And what ended up happening is once I got around to passing the bar, having the information that I passed the bar, they were trying to send me somewhere that I did not want to go, so I denied the placement. Now, any other branch of service, if you go into their JAG program, they have you once you actually enter into their program. But that was a slight hiccup, so then I was going to the FBI. So I took phase 1 testing of the FBI, and then a hiring freeze happened with the federal government, so they weren't hiring special agents anymore. So now I had left Houston and I moved to Maryland, and I ended up, what am I going to do with myself, right? We have a hiring freeze. My plan A and B did not work out. What am I going to do? So I ended up biding my time, so to speak. I was doing contract attorney work, making great friends, and doing those types of things, and got cases and intellectual property rights cases. I did some tobacco litigation cases. I did some very fascinating things as a contract attorney. And then unfortunately, after September the 11th, the hiring freeze was lifted and agents were being hired again. So I ended up going into the FBI in 2002. Right? Yeah, that's right. And so the FBI then shipped me out to Los Angeles, California, and they put me on a cybercrime squad. So I started investigating cybercrime, and that was fascinating. I mean, back then it was auction fraud. It was intellectual property rights cases. I did some denial of service attack cases, and I would say that that's when everything kind of started to come together for me in this information security space, because I had the technical background, I had the legal expertise, and I was a federal investigator, right? So I actually were catching criminals, and so I thought my vision was FBI. That's what was going to happen, right? So we go from IT to law school. Now I'm going to be an FBI agent for the next 20-something years. Life happens. And I ended up having to make another decision, right? And this is, the sentiment of what I'm trying to share with you guys. You end up having to make a decision. So I was out in Los Angeles. There were a couple of deaths that happened in my family. I was pregnant with my first child. I wanted to get closer to home. And so I did the networking. I did the necessary, kissing of the necessary people's behinds that I needed to do so to try to get to formulate a actual transfer. And so eventually it got down to the point where the field office in Los Angeles was willing to let me go back to Cincinnati, Ohio. I had spoken to, at one of the funerals, I ended up talking to the head of the office in the Cincinnati office, and he said, yes, we want her. And then Washington field office HQ came back and said, no, she can't go. And so I was faced with this dilemma where by the time this was going on, my son was born. I had my second child as well, and I was going through a divorce. So you have personal stuff that comes in there as well, and it became okay. So what do I do? what am I going to do now that I'm faced with this challenge? I thought I was going to be a special agent for my career, and now I have to make a different decision. So I had to make the choice, and I ended up choosing to leave service. So leaving service, then I become, I'm transitioning back from L.A. to Cincinnati, and then I'm doing the entrepreneur thing. I started my first consulting practice because, of course, I believe that everyone wants to do something about information security. I started a consulting firm. I was helping businesses comply with HIPAA is what was really happening to speed up my story a little bit. And so I was able to do that for like 4 years before I had to make a different decision because essentially I ran out of money. So entrepreneurs, we do that. If you're an entrepreneur, you know that. You have a limited amount of income, and then once you run out, you have to go find something to do. So I had to go find a job. And so that started my corporate journey. My corporate journey, I spent time with GE Capital. I spent time with Johnson & Johnson. I spent time with Comcast, all as an executive in security operations for GE Capital and J&J, and then I was in the global chief information security officer's umbrella under Comcast. And I will lump my corporate experience into one of the most challenging experiences in my life. And there were, and I wrote some of the things down, and I'm not going to be specific about organizations, but I had teams that worked for me. So, I've had to deal with bad bosses. I've had to deal with employees actually trying to sabotage the organization, my organization specifically, because they didn't like me. I had bosses of bosses that were changing what I would say job reviews or end of year employment reviews because they had a personal relationship with the person that was being actually reviewed. I've had to deal with unconscious bias. I've had to deal with ethical issues in regards to the people I was working with, sexism, racism, all of that stuff. At the end of the day, my short tenure in the broad scheme of things, in that 5 years' time, I had all of this stuff. So let me back up a little bit. When I started my corporate journey, after, I ran out of money, I specifically remember it was 2012 when I started my corporate journey, and my goal was to be a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, in 5 years' time, because hopefully we'll be able to talk goals in January, but setting out your individual goals and objectives, whether it be 1 year, 3 year, 5 year types of goals, those are very important for you guys to set for yourself so you can now judge yourself. See, I do annual goals as well. So October and November, it's always that time that I go back and I look at what I said I wanted to get accomplished for the year and see what happened. So you want to have those for yourself, not only just in corporate, not only just for your job, but for yourself personally. You want to have that, and you want to do that. But my goal was to become a CISO by 2017. Now, all of those things that I had to go through, all of the challenges that I faced in my career, and pointed me in my decision to leave each one of these entities that I left, were always places where I had to actually pause and make the right decision for myself. So I've been toying with writing a book, and the name of the book, Don't Take It, Don't Steal It. I may not say it. Pivoting is one of the aspects of the book. I used to play basketball, and so everyone can understand the actual analogy of being on the basketball court and you have the ball in your hand, or you get the ball in your hand and you have choices. You have choices when you have the ball in the hand. You can pass the ball. You can push right through the person. You can charge. You can always take your shot. You can always shoot your shot, and then you have to pivot. And so essentially you can cross over, you can do what, but the whole thought about it is you have to make a decision. And there are times that in my corporate career where it wasn't just a pause, it was a roadblock. It was just I ran into a brick wall, and I said, what in the world is going on? What am I going to do? And so what I would like to do, okay, I'm sorry, let me continue and then go back. So after I had to make another decision. I was faced with another decision in my career in 2017. My father passed away, and I was in a position in corporate that I did not like. I was not happy. Even though I had reached a certain level financially as well as from a career perspective, I wasn't happy with where I was and what I was doing in the place that I was doing it for. And so I had to make another decision. By this time, after all of these years of learning to pivot and getting and collecting my skills or whatever, I said, this time I'm going to do something for myself. And that's when I decided to now step out of corporate America and start my own cybersecurity and privacy law practice. The premise of that being, I don't know too many attorneys out there that actually know how to run security operations and actually can bring the technical as well as the legal aspects to a problem to help their clients reduce their risk or to actually mitigate or whatever the risks that are associated with what they're doing from a cybersecurity and privacy perspective. So, you know, the law practice I'll be 2 years old in January, and it's still a startup, so it's still going. I'm still trying to be innovative and do different things, but that's where I am today. So, okay, I'm going to stop there because you guys are muted. I said a lot. You can *6 if you want to unmute yourself and see if there's any questions or comments from what I've just shared with you up until this point. Nobody? I'm going to unmute everybody since we don't have a lot of folks. So anybody can talk.
Hello?
Uh-oh. Well, we got some background noise. Is there any questions?
I had a comment. I don't know if anyone can hear me or if there's an echo. It sounds like there's an echo.
Who's speaking?
Hello?
I can hear whoever's speaking. I hear you. It's an echo, but I do hear you.
Okay. I wonder if there's another way to speak.
Okay, well, let me mute all, and then you unmute yourself.
Okay. Hello?
Okay, there you go.
Much better. This is KJ Haywood. So, Mary, thank you for hosting this topic. With my crazy schedule, I saw this on the calendar, and I had to jump in tonight. I don't know who's on the call, but I want to echo 99.9% of everything that you shared. My 1% is that I've always been curious about people of color in the cyberspace that are at an executive level. And are they experiencing the exact challenges that some of us have started cyber? For me, I switched careers. So I started cyber as an analyst. And I've always been curious, and I'm so glad that you shared your story tonight, whether or not we have this underarching challenges that we don't really talk about. and we don't really share. I wish I had known as much as you shared tonight, moving into this space, working in corporate America. The challenges that I experienced are very similar to yours, but again, I was at the front end. I was not on an executive level in the C-suite as yourself. So it's almost refreshing to know that I was not alone. I had to shift gears several times because I just for the various reasons that you shared with us tonight, just making executive decisions and taking control of my career. So my question to you is, have you spoken to other people that have not worked at your level, who've worked at my level, coming into the cyberspace, that have also experienced similar challenges as people of color in various organizations?
Yes, which is the reason why this organization exists. So I have been a mentor to several individuals over the course of my career. I got up to about 30 before I decided to start minorities in cybersecurity, and they were the reason why. So I had women and men involved that reached out to me as I was, because in my corporate career I started collecting people that wanted that view. They wanted that view from the top. Not a lot of executives. They don't have access to a lot of executives, especially executives that are female and executives of color. So people kept reaching out to me, wanting me to mentor them. And so when I used to have these monthly calls with them, and I would get the same questions over and over and over again about the challenges that they were facing in their careers, and they were, how did I deal with it? So to answer your question, yes, it doesn't matter what level you are, even if you're entry level coming in, as you continue your career, which is sort of how our membership is set up to help you, phase you, because you will experience different levels or different types of this challenges depending on where you are. So as you traverse from entry level into maybe a manager role, and then from or at least a leader role, then a manager role, and as you're trying to get from a manager to a director, and then trying to get from a director possibly to the C-suite, as you're transitioning, there are different challenges that you're going to experience, and there are different skills that you need to start to collect in order to prepare you to deal with these things. So it's like you experience something, and you just take it as, okay, I'm going to put that in my toolbox, right? So as you're going through these challenges, and as challenging as my corporate career was, I cannot discount the fact that I would not be where I am doing what I'm doing and what I love to do now if I didn't experience those challenges. What those challenges allowed me to do is to determine what it is I'm willing to do. So what I want to do, and KJ, I hope I answered your question. What I want to do is give you guys 5 things. I wrote down 5 different things that are good to know as you're that are staples for me, that were staples for me, and I'll try to give examples as I go through this. So the first is to build your subject matter expertise in multiple areas. And what I mean by that is, if you know, like for instance, I wanted to be a CISO. So I needed a broad range of understanding of how corporate America works, not only from a technical or a operational perspective, but from a political perspective. So you always have these 2 tracks. You're building your expertise in the technical, let's call it your skill and piece, but then you also have these political or soft skills things that you have to do, right? So when you're entry level transitioning into this particular field, your focus should be gathering as much as experience as you can. I know there are a lot of, and because I'm a teacher as well, I teach at the University of Cincinnati, so I have students that would like to believe they're going to go into a technical role, and they're going to be in that role for the rest of their career. What they're going to find out, and what happens to when you have that mentality, is you become a subject matter expert in one particular tool, and you're working that tool for the rest of your career, especially if you go into corporate. And then it becomes boring. And so now I'm telling you guys, as I tell my students, you need to be mindful of that you're still learning new things. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning one thing, but if you want to hit the hammer all day, every day, doing the same thing and not mentally challenged because you've maxed out your knowledge on a particular tool, that's eventually going to go away, because the tool life is what, maybe 2.5 years, maybe tops. So, you want to make sure, you want to be a pen tester, but you also want to understand vulnerability management. You want to, you want to go in, you want to be an incident response person, but you also may want to understand risk management. And so there, the level of experience that you can have, especially in cybersecurity, and now you guys have this privacy thing that's coming too, that I would suggest you all, take a look at as well. You have all of these places that you can go and these things that you can do. So your focus is to collect as much as you can and get out of your comfort zone. Take stretch projects. Go talk to people that you don't normally talk to. That's going to help you in the future. Number 2, where is my paper? Number 2 is know yourself and develop your mental firewall. Now, minorities and women tend to be emotional. We tend to get frustrated about process, about unconscious bias, about things that we feel that we were slighted. However, you need to understand at this particular point, know yourself enough to know whether that culture is a culture that is conducive to your success. So this is where I distinguish diversity and inclusion. Diversity is just a whole bunch of different people in a room together. Inclusion means everybody in that room has the same opportunity to be successful in that company culture, period. It's 2 different things. And diversity can happen organically. It can happen through hires. Inclusion is purposeful. So you have to now know yourself enough to look at the people in around you and the culture you're in and ask yourself the question, can I be successful in this organization the way I want to be? Or can I attain all the skills? Am I getting my training? Do I have a good relationship with my boss, my peers? The culture thing matters. I think the third thing is to pay attention to your external brand as well. You guys hear me often talk about branding. You are your own brand. You are the CEO of your life. So you need to treat yourself like you're the CEO of your life and understand that getting out there, once you have an established subject matter expertise, getting out there and do some speaking events. What I said to you guys earlier, you can't be what you can't see. And there are many people like, that look like you, that are the same sex as you, that understand your story, that have the same experience as you, that need to see you, because they can say, oh, at least I am not alone, similar to what KJ was saying, to share the story, to get out there and talk about these things, and not just the diversity and inclusion piece.
But some participants may be experiencing temporary audio issues. Our teams are working to resolve this as quickly as possible.
Okay, I got a message, so let me unmute. Do I still have you guys? I got a message from the recording said there are some people experiencing audio issues, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys still hear me. Can someone say, yes, Mary, I still hear you? Okay. Yes. Okay. I will put you guys back on mute, so I will continue to go. Okay, so where was I? I said pay attention to your own brand. That was number 3. I think number 4 is you have to know your breaking point. And as we talk about culture and as we look at culture, and as painful as job searching is, you're never stuck. You're only stuck in your mind, right? And if you paid attention to step 1, which is building your skills, if you've paid attention to culture, you should be able to determine based on what you're seeing in that culture, am I going to continue to butt my head up against the wall? I'll give you a perfect example from my own personal career. One of the corporations I work for, I had an executive coach. So I had a coach that for years that was helping me as I transitioned through corporate America. And there was a situation where I was experiencing, it was a really, really bad culture, and I was experiencing this situation where I felt like I was being muffled, so to speak. So some of it was very direct, and I hasten to say it was not a very good experience, and it was more the culture of the organization. And you have organizational cultures, and then you have subcultures, like cultures within an organization that your boss's team, right? But in this particular case, the subculture that I was in on this team that I was in, it wasn't right, and I just felt really bad about it. So I was talking to my coach, and I was just frustrated. I was I was done, and I told her as much. And she made the comment to me. She said, "Well, Mary, maybe, you're being put in that position so you can change it." Okay, so it was that particular point where I had the thought, and I shared this with my coach, and I said, "Listen, it's always going to be a fight. As a minority and a woman in this field, as a double minority as I am in this field, and trying to change myself to be in this particular position, it's always going to be a challenge. The question is, did I feel it was worth what it will take out of me to try to change something that you ultimately is not in your control?" It's the culture comes from the top. The tone is set from the top. And if it's corrosive at the top, how am I, if I'm not at the top, going to effectively change it? I can create a subculture for my team, which I did in certain cases. However, when it's corrosive at the top, it flows down. So the question that I ended up asking myself is it worth everything that I have to give in this situation, or is it time for me to pivot? Right? In this particular issue, I said pass. It was at this particular point that I was thinking about passing on corporate America, period. And I'm still in that space where I do not feel that corporate America is the right place for me, just based on all that it takes out of you and the behaviors and the bad behaviors I've seen at folks at my level and above. It's not even below. It was above. So, you have to know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, because, I've watched people struggle with their own identity in certain aspects and certain positions that they were in, just because it was just counter to who they were as an individual person. So, and lastly, my 5th note that I wrote down to myself is there are some times where you're stuck, right? There are sometimes you can't pivot around it. You can't push your way through it. You can't pass the ball. You're just stuck. And I've been there. There's been situations where I had to stay from a financial perspective. When you get to a certain level and they start offering you all these packages, those packages normally come with some type of stipulation from a salary perspective that if they do certain things, you have to stay for a certain amount of years. So I've had that a couple of times in my career. Well, actually, I think even the FBI did it. So I think I've had it like 3 or 4 times where I've had to stay. I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck in that role. And this is what I'll say: if when all else fails and you can't seem to get past that block because you're stuck, it's always a good idea to focus on others. And what I've done in my lifetime, in what I'm doing with minorities in cybersecurity, and what I was doing when I was mentoring, and I was doing all of those other things, it was finding something else that I can that felt good, and that I could feel like I'm giving back to someone. So sharing my story or sharing my challenges, as much as I like to say I was a mentor to those many girls, a lot of those women, they were in it with me, right? They were actually experiencing my challenges real time. And so they actually helped me by being able to articulate what I was going to. I was helping them, but they were also helping me. So those are my 5 little tricks of the trade, so to speak. I'm sure there's more, but those are the ones that I was jotting down as I was getting prepared for this call that came to my head real fast about some things that you could potentially do when you experience those challenges. So now Mary has talked for 45 minutes, and we have 15 minutes, and I want to hear from the audience to see questions about, what I've said, what I've shared, sharing any type of challenges that you may be going through at the moment that you want to talk through, that you feel comfortable with sharing. Please do. So I'm going to stop talking, and star 6 if you have something that you want to actually contribute to the conversation. Here, have your voice heard on the mic.
Hi, Mary. It's KJ again.
Okay.
Just one thing I want to add. Everything that you listed of the 5 items that we should consider: building the career, knowing yourself, paying attention to your external brand. And as a experienced professional shifting into the cyberspace, I lack one of the 5. And I can share in very, very briefly that my experiences are very much aligned with yours, as you stated earlier, and thank you for answering my question. I've had extremely similar experiences again, but not at the C-suite level. And so some of the advice that you're giving us tonight, there's one that stands out for me, which is paying attention to my personal brand. As an experienced hire, I come from a different world. I've worked in corporate a number of years in my life, and I'm finding myself in the same space of I'm having challenges within my culture, within my corporate culture, and I'm failing. I'm failing because I am being challenged with things that I definitely cannot pivot from. It is the culture. But what I appreciate is that you're giving us tools that we can use to pivot our own lives as well as our own careers. So I just wanted to share with the group that without going into much detail, from personal experience, I keep running into these brick walls of, well, we need you to have the alphabet soup behind your name, but yet when I get into an organization, the person who is managing me does not have the alphabet soup. And they're asking me to have, all the certifications behind my name, but yet I know how to do the work. Yet the management doesn't. Mm-hmm. So it's these double standards that I've been running into. Oh, well, Joe, we know Joe, but we don't really know you. But we know that you're good, but we would prefer to have Joe because we know Joe because he went to the same college we went to. Just simple things like that, silly things, but that can be game changers in terms of the work that you're trying to do and trying to learn and grow. One last thing I want to add was I like the number 5, which is when all else fails, finding something to divert your attention to. And I want to say I've done that, and it has really, really worked well for me. So I'm going to end with that, but I want to say thank you very much for the 5 tools.
Oh, no, my pleasure. I think that, we can have a whole different hour-long discussion about dealing with bosses. Yeah, but we're not going to go there. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Is there someone else out there? I think I saw someone else trying to unmute themselves to talk.
Hi, Mary. My name is Manny. I wanted to echo what you said. Thank you. Everything you said just completely resonated with what I had gone through in my career too. And I think it would be a great exercise if you could take some of this and document it for anyone out there to leverage just by kind of reading the 5 or the other best practices that you offered around, being persevering in what you want to do, managing your patience and expectations, and working around kind of the biases that you grow up with, right? Looking at things from a different viewpoint or a different glass. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely welcome. And it's that book that I haven't written that's been on my shelf that I've been toying with for the past several years that everyone keeps telling me to write. It's more aligned and more of those types of things. I think that, again, it's very, very, very important to tell the story so we know that we're not alone, and in that regard. So I'm glad for the feedback. I'm glad for you guys for sharing or thinking that I'm providing something that you guys can help with. I think that as you now start to go on and continue your journey, that managing your brand thing is important. I think that at the end of the day, in each one of my careers that I've had, each situation that I've been in that I've had to make a decision, it was my outside relationships that actually propelled me out of those situations than it was, internally.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think even as you're developing towards your book, if you even had a 5-point blog on it, I would pass this to every young, mid-career individual that's out there that's really looking to kind of break the glass ceiling and move up, right? I mean, those are the kind of things I think that hold them back. And you did a great job at articulating it. Thank you again.
No, thank you, and have them join our calls. And I'm actually recording this one, so I'm going to post this one as well, so you can point them to the website, and they can hear this discussion as well. So I think that one of the things that I would like to do going forward, and as I continue, because I'm running 2 startups, is to get you guys more involved in giving me some ideas on how we now draw more members to our organization so we can share those thoughts. I mean, I have more people on the phone that are actually talking. However, I want to get to the point where everybody feels comfortable with sharing, and you can understand that as we're now all going through these situations together, you have this community that you can rely on, that you can talk to and get advice and counsel. I don't know if I'm the only board member on here, and everyone's name's not coming up, but I as we now step through this process, being able to share and learn from one another is one of the things that I want this organization to be about. So I see some names. I can't call on people if you guys don't want to talk. I see some folks that are there that are listening that's not talking. No takers? Well, we have 7 minutes. Like I said, I can go through, another type of scenario. So, as your brand and building your subject matter expertise is important, building those outside relationships. Like I said, next month we're going to have the conversation that I think you all will want to listen into in regards to getting out of your comfort zone and building relationships outside of the people that look like you, and those things. I think one of the things that has helped me in my career is that I've taken advice and counsel from a lot of people that don't necessarily look like me. I've had coaches, I've had mentors, I've had sponsors, I had advocates. The coach that I was speaking about earlier, she was a Caucasian female. The mentor and coach that I have now is a Caucasian female. I've had one of my bosses, which was my first boss at GE Capital. His name was James. I could actually point to him as the person who supported me in my efforts to become a speaker. He actually told me that it was part of my responsibility to be seen and to be heard and to attend these events and actually to share my story, and because it was very important. And I've had opportunities where I've had good and bad, in both good guys, good gals, bad guys, bad gals, and so I don't necessarily have a bias against learning from others. If I actually can humble myself to speak to people when I'm having those challenges. I remember talking to the man yesterday about a situation where I was in when I first came into corporate, into a particular environment, and I was having a team meeting. So I was having a meeting with my team, and my boss was in that meeting, and he actually made a slave joke in that meeting. And I was telling the guy yesterday, I said, so here I am, new to the company. I have my team in the room, which was a diverse team. And my boss, who was a white male, makes a slave joke. And in reality, I can't say a word. I said, because as soon as I tell him how inappropriate that was, I become, oh, well, Mary, you're being too sensitive. Or if I'm in a situation where I'm expressing myself, oh, well, she's angry, or she's aggressive, or she's intimidating, or she's this, she's that. And so my question to him, and unfortunately, none of the other people in the room felt comfortable with saying anything, because he was my boss and I was their boss. So he's two levels above me, them. So I wasn't in a room of peers or in the room of his peers for them to feel comfortable with pulling him to the side. I said, but at some point, we need to be comfortable with pulling someone to the side and saying, that's really not appropriate, that's insensitive, and that doesn't necessarily, that shouldn't have to fall on me as the quote-unquote target or the person that's sensitive to this, And so you have those challenges that you're in, and you have to deal with them, and it's flat in your face, and you have to be in a position to decide, like, that fast, what are you going to do? Because you can't go with the first instinct. I tell you, I had a first instinct, but I could not. I could not go with my first instinct. So some of these, like I said, these tips or tools of the trade that I want you guys to now listen and put into your toolbox. You just have to be prepared and be mindful that you never want to put yourself in a situation where you can't pivot out of something bad that you're in, right? You may have to stay longer, may have to stay on that team a little longer, but you have to always be preparing yourself for the what if this goes wrong scenario, right? So I'll one more time before we have 1 more minute before I'll end the call. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. You got some tools that you can now put in your toolbox to now move forward. If there's anything that you guys need from me, you have my email, you have my social handles. Just please feel free to reach out. So one more time, any questions, any concerns? You guys aren't going to say anything because it's 1 minute to go. I know how that works. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys again, and hopefully you guys will be able to join us again next month. Thank you so much for your time, and you guys have a great weekend.